Hi, I'm Tom, and this is Adult Game Reviews. This week I review the old-school feeling point-and-click adventure game Mindweaver Chronicles. I got it off of Steam on sale for $8.99, and it was just released on September 10th. It has been years since I played any point-and-click adventure game. Some people say the genre died for a reason, but many of my best gaming experiences have been with adventure games. Can Mindweaver Chronicles capture the same magic of great games like King's Quest, or should it be put on the pile of all the failed and forgotten adventure games of the past? Let's find out. Okay, so if you weren't aware, there's a culture war going on against adult content in almost all forms. As long as you're in a safe area to do so, I would suggest calling or emailing your representatives telling them to vote against whatever censorship measure is currently on the docket. If you're watching my channel, you're an adult. You should get to choose what content you consume.
And it's worth fighting for.
That also means to even see my content now, you have to have notifications turned on. So please like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell and set it to all. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so some adventure games I remember watching my father play were classics like King's Quest, Space Quest, and even Police Quest. One of my favorite games of all time was The Longest Journey. It was one of the first games that really made me feel something other than rage. When I say Mindweaver Chronicles is like those old adventure games, it's true, but in a much lighter way. One of the big downsides is it was inevitable with old adventure games that you had to look up a guide to get past certain parts. I didn't really have this issue with Mindweaver Chronicles, but more on that later. You play the female MC who has a loved one die. You then get recruited by a super secret organization where they are able to take down crime through subterfuge and stealth. You end up accidentally or on purpose gaining the ability to transform yourself into the desired object of whatever mark you have. For instance, if the biggest fantasy of John in accounting is a giant orc woman, you could transform yourself for a short period of time into that giant orc woman.
Snoo! Can't we just cuddle?
So the benefits of this ability are endless. This is basically where your job starts. Visually, you have a very stylized illustrative style. The camera aspect of the game is a little further away from the characters that I'm used to when compared to visual novels. This means when you zoom in or really look at some of the small details, they can be lacking. Don't get me wrong, I like the visuals, but they can be a bit simplistic from a detail quality standpoint. Audio-wise, there are sound effects here and there, but the constant looping music could be super annoying, and I turned that off at one point. I mean, otherwise, at least it had audio. Let's move into the gameplay. This is where the meat and potatoes of this whole game is. You're given tasks or missions to go on, and this is where the point-and-click adventure is really highlighted. All the missions, except for one specific mission that takes you to a few locations all over the map, you're confined to small, defined areas where you have to use all the objects you find to get past obstacles or complete objectives. There are pros and cons here. The first pro is that the puzzles make sense for the most part. It's super common in point-and-click games that you solve the puzzle in some counterintuitive way, which makes it necessary to use a guide. I didn't really have that issue with Mindweaver Chronicles. However, there were times where I felt the puzzles were pretty easy or almost overly simplistic. I mean, I was able to beat the whole game in 4 to 5 hours. If you want 100% it, then it will take you a little bit longer.
But if it lasts more than 4 hours, or if it hurts, you should see a doctor right away.
Another pro and con is that the story is pretty linear and straightforward. It was enjoyable enough to keep me interested. There are no choices or the MC's ability to change any aspect of the story, but a linear story is not uncommon for these types of games, but I know that does also bother some people. I will say the main power the MC has leads to humorous or interesting grown-up fun, but outside of some funny moments, the actual spicy content was pretty repetitive with minor differences between each scene. This was pretty disappointing because I felt like the power the MC has should or could be used for some really ridiculous fun scenes, and unfortunately, most were pretty boring. They looked good based on the art style, but in general, it felt like they lacked creativity. So what did I think? This really did feel like an old school adventure game. This is good and bad. The puzzles made sense, but did feel a little simple. The art style was pretty, but did lack details at times, and the story was linear with some fun and humorous moments in it. The writing was solid, but the game in general is kind of short. The biggest disappointment was the spicy scenes. They lacked creativity even with the perfect setup as the MC's powers. So if you're a fan of old school point-and-click adventure games like I am, you can have fun here. I did enjoy my time with it, but in terms of adventure games, it was fairly mediocre. So the choice is up to you. I want to thank all my backers on Patreon and Subscribestar, and if you haven't seen my video on the missing part, you can check it out right here. Thanks again. Until next time.